I did not take the easy questions. I took what by everybody's agreement is the most controversial, the most allegedly complicated questions. And when these allegedly complicated questions came before the highest judicial body in the world, there was almost no controversy at all. The vote was 14-1. And on the most important question, the settlements, the vote was 15-0, which means mathematically it's demonstrated that there is exactly zero controversy on what's alleged to be the most complicated question. Now, I want to try in the time that remains to go through some of the history, the human rights, and the diplomatic record to illustrate this point further, and then I'll keep my watch in front of me, and I guess I should stop in 20 minutes to leave time for questions and answers for a half hour, so it doesn't really leave me very much time. Let me go through three aspects fairly quickly. There are a number of older people in the room, and for those who have followed the conflict for the last, say, 30 years and more, when the historical question, the history of the conflict, is discussed, it used to be that the most complicated question was, how did the Palestinians become refugees in 1948? In the course of the creation of Israel, about 750,000 Palestinians from the area that became Israel ended up outside the newly formed state of Israel, and they ended up in refugee camps in Gaza, the West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, mostly in those areas. And Israel, for a very long time, and many people believed it, Israel said, it wasn't our fault that they became refugees. What happened was the invading Arab armies, they gave instructions to the Palestinians using radio broadcasts. They gave instructions to the Palestinians to leave their homes and to make space for the invading Arab armies to throw the Jews into the sea, and then after the Jews have been thrown into the sea, the Palestinians can return to their homes. For a very long time, that was largely believed by people. But by the late 1980s, a large number of historians, most importantly in this case, Israeli historians, started to go through the documentary record looking at Israeli documents. And they came to the conclusion, which is now widely accepted by almost all historians, that what happened in 1948, to use the words of the most knowledgeable historian on the topic, an Israeli named Benny Morris, he said what happened in 1948 was an ethnic cleansing. As I said, nowadays, nobody takes seriously the Israeli claim that Arab radio broadcasts were responsible. Most historians, in fact, I dare say nearly all serious historians, acknowledge it was an ethnic cleansing. The only real debate is whether it was intentional, that Israel planned the ethnic cleansing ahead of time, or were these refugees just a result of wartime conflict? As we all know, wars produce refugees. To give you an indication of how narrow the debate is now, you take the case of Israel's former foreign minister, a fellow named Shlomo Ben-Ami. And Mr. Ami recently wrote a book. It was called Scars of War, Wounds of Peace. And Mr. Ami, Shlomo Ben-Ami, Mr. Ben-Ami, he says, it's clear that what happened in 1948 was an ethnic cleansing. But Mr. Shlomo Ben-Ami, the former foreign minister, he says, I don't agree that it was just a result of war. He said if you look at the Zionist ideology, it was clear in order to create a Jewish state in an area which was overwhelmingly not Jewish, the only way you can do it was by clearing out the indigenous population. And that during the war, there was an opportunity to do so. And that's what the newly born state of Israel proceeded to do. Aside from the question of the refugees, the other main historical question has always been who was responsible for all the wars between Israel and its Arab neighbors, and between Israel, the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians in the occupied territories. Israel likes to say that all of its wars were wars of self-defense, or what they call wars of necessity. These were wars which Israel says they had no choice but to fight. They had no other option. These were wars of self-defense. Recently, one of Israel's best scholars, he was the director of a main research institute in Israel called the Jaffe Center for Strategic Studies. His name is Ze'ev Maoz, and he wrote this very big book. It's probably around 800 pages, and it's called In Defense of the Holy Land. And Mr. Maoz, he said, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to look at all of the scholarship, all of the research that has been written by all other historians on all the wars, the 48 war, the 56 war, the 67 war, the 73 war, the 82 war, and so on. I left out quite a few. I just listed the ones which most of you would know. He said, I'm going to look at all the scholarship, what all the other professors and researchers have written